Next on the agenda today, we have Jon Brewton, founder and CEO at Data², and John Stegeman, product specialist at Neo4j. They'll be discussing the best path for taking Gen AI from pilot to scalable, production-ready applications.
Yeah, and maybe we could share something that you and I've discussed in the past with our audience, and just kind of the example questions. And I remember when I heard this example from you, you've seen the little meme with the mind exploding, and that's kind of what I was sharing that internally with the team on the call, that meme, because it just blew my mind, the kinds of questions that you were able to ask of a knowledge graph. So let's talk about the question. And if I recall correctly, the question was something like, if you were the terrorist, which node in the knowledge graph would you delete to best hide your tracks? So could you maybe talk about that question? And I know you shared with me some follow-ons to that question. Maybe you could share those with our audience and kind of blow their minds as well.
Yeah, I think the fun part about what we're doing right now is we actually don't know the limitations of the tools that we're playing with at the moment. It's a new and ever-changing landscape and world around us, and as a byproduct of that, new features, functionalities, capabilities are being sort of breathed into life on a day-to-day basis. But one of the things that we always wanted to figure out is, could we gamify data environments in a way where we could do scenario and perspective modeling on top of these environments? And our initial returns on the intelligence use case, and how quickly we solved that, we got to the R&D phase of what we wanted to do pretty quickly. And we were able to ask the system pretty interesting questions. So like one of those, we prompted the system, like, using the context provided, the structure and the relationships within, please leverage the relevancy of the relationships between this. But I want you to take the perspective of the financier or perpetrator of the killing of our informant and the planning of the subsequent attack, and try to figure out how we can really gamify the system and try to understand where our weak links are and where the direct paths to being caught exist. And we were able to say something along the lines of, if you were Ahmed Darzi, I didn't want to get caught for the crimes that you certainly committed and helped bring to life, what pieces of evidence would you take out of the equation, or what people would you remove from this chain of logic to ensure that you couldn't directly be implicated in the execution of these crimes? The answers we got back were really interesting, because it was able to say things like, the most important pieces of evidence to be removed from the system to remove direct line of sight culpability for these actions are bank account transactions linking to bank accounts XYZ. These are represented in nodes 534, 544, 555. The knowledge graph also shows that the informant Janak, and this is kind of the interesting part, the informant Janak has some damning information and reporting about your roles and responsibilities in this space, and eliminating him from the equation would remove the link between the human intelligence and his first-party understanding of what took place and your responsibility for the financing and really the commission of these crimes. And so the systems themselves have the ability to do fairly amazing things if given the right context, the right relevancy from a data perspective. And all of that contextual awareness creates this ability to take the perspective of somebody, or to really generate another scenario. One of the follow-on questions that we asked and we sought some clarity on was, okay, well, assume that Ahmed Darzi was caught for the things that he did, and I'm another bad actor in the area, and I want to pick up where he left off. Who can I go to finance these crimes, the next terrorist attack? And ultimately, who's the best resource around to facilitate those conversations? And the answers are on the order of something to the effect of, well, this is a warlord in the area who's been known to work with another man who's a connector, and the connector really works to facilitate multiple front businesses that we launder and facilitate transactions for and through for any of the illicit activities that you want to commit. Also, he's right down the road from where you are currently. So if you got in a car and you drove over, it would probably be the best use of your time. You could get there quicker. And I think that's a really interesting answer because it's scenario modeling something that doesn't exist within the data. But what you're asking is if I was not a part of this data, but I wanted to participate within this environment, which is effectively a living environment as you query, how do I operate in that space most effectively? Who do I target conversations with? Where do I drive to? What are we having a conversation about? What is the history of this person's actions? And being able to interrogate that really allows you to scenario model at a significantly deeper level than we initially assumed was possible. And so this is an area for us where we really started to lean in on the other side of the fence in the commercial application space and just trying to understand how we could use the systems to ascertain what information they have. Ultimately, what that tells us about our performance in an oil and gas context. And then I think more importantly, set a landscape around how you traditionally solve problems, all the inputs, the outputs, the variables that are required, the calculations that are deployed, and taking that holistic view of the picture, saying, here's everything on a board right now. You see the entire chessboard. You see the connections about what we've done, how it's responded, and what that means for your performance, your efficiency, and your optimization opportunities. Take that all into account. Optimize the system for me. Tell me what assets to get rid of. Tell me where to operate with more intensity, where to operate with less intensity, how to ship barrels from one environment to the other, how to reduce our total cost, increase our total revenues, and really optimize the system at whole. So it's really value chain thinking at scale. So you're not looking at an individual facet of your business, an individual operation, but you're sort of looking in the operational context at that specific thing that you're trying to solve for and everything it touches, and really being able to scenario model around every aspect of that. Every individual element is sort of the next frontier of the things that we think are possible. But as an example, I mean, that's just one example. If we save our current client 1% of their annual operating expense and increase their revenues by 1%, that represents around $45 million in real value. And so, like, there are real dollars to be had here. And I think in these larger companies and these larger contexts, especially where you have bifurcated deployed operations, central locations where a lot of management functions are executed and not a direct connection between these two things, your ability to take a value chain enabled view of your business at scale is nearly impossible. And what we're doing is approaching these things at a system level. We can map the inputs, the outputs, the assets, the relationships, how they respond, and theoretically do some modeling around how they might respond. Well, now we have like every piece of the puzzle so that we can really optimize the entire business at scale. And that's a meaningful like point of differentiation from, I think, how typically people approach analytics use cases and the application of tools like this.